So, when you think of intuitive machines, you probably think about those historic lunar landings, right? A huge success story. But what if I told you that was just the opening act? We're going to go deep, I mean really deep, into their financial filings. And what we found is a story that's way bigger, way more ambitious. They're making a massive pivot, away from just doing missions and toward becoming something they call a space prime. They want to build the entire infrastructure for a permanent economy around the moon. All right, let's get into it.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with what this space prime thing is all about. Then we'll look at their game plan for building what's basically a competitive moat around the moon. Of course, we have to talk money. What's the price tag for this massive shift? From there, we'll jump into the long-term vision, the big picture. And to keep things real, we'll wrap up by looking at the serious risks involved, which all leads to the big question for any investor.
You know, sometimes you find one sentence that just clicks everything into place. This is it. This quote, straight from their filings, is the master key. It's not just about planting a flag anymore. The game has changed. It's about staying on the moon, building the networks, and running it all like a continuous business. Honestly, this one idea changes how you have to look at the entire company.
Think of those incredible missions in 2024 and 2025. They weren't the finish line. Nope. They were just the cover charge to get into the club. It was all about proving they have the technical chops to actually work in that crazy cislunar environment. And now they're cashing in that credibility chip. They're stepping up to become a prime contractor. You know, one of the foundational companies building the actual systems we'll need for a permanent life beyond Earth.
Okay, so here's the big question. How on earth do you build a business that lasts? A defensible business in a place as tough as space? Well, their strategy is to build a cislunar moat. It's a fantastic term. It's all about creating this powerful set of advantages that makes it incredibly hard for anyone else to compete, locking in value for years, even decades. And the plan is actually pretty straightforward, but it's really powerful. It's a three-step play. Build, connect, operate. Step 1, build the hardware. We're talking landers, satellites, all the physical stuff. Step 2, connect it all. Turn that hardware into a working communications and navigation network. And step 3, the real moneymaker. Operate it all as a service. This is where you get that sweet, predictable, recurring revenue.
And this is the heart of the business model shift. It's a total pivot away from that old, nail-biting, project-to-project way of life, where you get paid for one mission and then who knows. The new goal is to be more like a utility company. Think about it. They want long-term service contracts that bring in steady, predictable cash. It's less about being a one-off builder and more about becoming the telecom and data utility for the moon.
So how are they putting all these pieces together? Well, what's so smart is they didn't try to build everything from the ground up. They went shopping. They made this incredibly surgical move to buy Kinetics, which gave them top-tier, battle-tested deep space navigation software. Then, bam, the huge acquisition of Lantris, which brings world-class satellite manufacturing power. This isn't just about getting bigger. It's classic vertical integration, but for the 21st century space race.
Okay, now we get to the absolute crown jewel of their entire strategy. This is huge. Intuitive Machines is the sole awardee for NASA's Near Space Network contract to provide data and communications relay services around the moon. Let that sink in. This is not just another contract, it's an exclusive license to build the communications backbone for the entire Artemis program. They're literally positioned to become the internet service provider for the moon.
All right, a plan this big, this ambitious, it's obviously not going to be cheap. So it's time to follow the money. Let's dig into the financials and see what the numbers tell us about the real cost of this transformation and, how the company is actually doing right now.
Let's start with a really important number, $213.1 million. That's their contracted backlog at the end of 2025. Now, what does backlog mean? It's basically all the money from contracts they've already signed but haven't collected yet. It's committed revenue, which gives us a fantastic window into what their finances will look like in the near future.
And here's the things about that backlog. It turns into actual cash really, really fast. They're expecting to see 60 to 65% of it hit the books in 2026 alone, and pretty much all the rest in 2027. In the aerospace world, having that kind of short-term certainty about your revenue, well, that's like finding gold. It's incredibly rare.
Okay, before we go to the next slide, we need to quickly talk about an accounting term that's super important here. It's called a loss contract. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a deal where a company knows up front that it's going to cost them more to do the work than they're actually getting paid for it.
So why did we just define that? Because get this,
The company's own filings say that the next two big lander missions, IM-3 and IM-4, are both lost contracts. Now, your first reaction might be, whoa, that's bad, but it's not a mistake. This is a deliberate strategic sacrifice. They actually chose to delay IM-3 and eat the extra costs, all so they could piggyback one of their own satellites on that launch. And that satellite? It's essential for that incredibly valuable NSN communications network contract. It's a classic case of taking a small hit now for a huge win later. They are absolutely playing the long game here.
Okay, let's look at the numbers side by side. This snapshot from 2025 really shows a company in the middle of a massive change. You see, revenue is down a bit, but that was mostly because a NASA project got canceled. Now, the net loss looks a lot better, but don't get too excited. That's mostly accounting stuff, not cash. The number to really watch for operational health is adjusted EBITDA, and you can see that loss got bigger. Why? Because this is what it looks like when you're spending a ton of money up front to build something huge.
All right, so we've seen the short-term pain, the heavy investment. Now let's lift our gaze a bit and look at the gain. Let's talk about the incredible long-term vision that all this spending is supposed to create.
The next 2 years are going to be absolutely critical. There are major milestones coming up. We've got the IM-3 mission launching in the back half of 2026, and then IM-4 about a year after that. But here's the really important part. These aren't just lander missions. They mark the beginning of the rollout for that 5-satellite constellation, the very heart of that exclusive NASA network.
And this is all part of what the company itself calls its moon-first strategy. It's a brilliant idea, really. They see the moon as the perfect testbed. It's the place where they can figure everything out. The tech, the infrastructure, the operations, and get it all working perfectly. Once they've mastered the moon, they can take that know-how and apply it back towards Earth. And, of course, the big prize, outward to Mars.
But look, a big vision is great, but it doesn't mean anything if you ignore the risks. And there are some very, very real risks here. So, for this to be a proper analysis, we have to take a hard, honest look at the challenges using the company's own disclosures as our guide. Okay, risk number 1, and it's a big one, customer concentration. Just look at this. In 2025, a massive 78% of their revenue came from a single source, NASA. That means they have all their eggs in one basket. Any change in federal budgets, a government shutdown, or just a shift in political winds in D.C. could hit them, and hit them hard.
And it doesn't stop there. There are other major hurdles to watch. On the operations side, they rely completely on SpaceX to get to orbit. That is a huge single point of failure. On the legal front, that new company they bought, LUNR, is currently being investigated by the Department of Justice. And just from a people perspective, they have the massive challenge of trying to integrate a ton of new employees. I mean, their staff more than tripled almost overnight. That's a huge management challenge. So all of this, the incredible vision, the bold strategy, the tough financials, the serious risks, it all brings us right here, to the fundamental dilemma for any investor looking at this company. When you boil it all down, it comes to this one powerful question. Is Intuitive Machines building the essential toll roads for the moon? Are they creating the data networks and the core infrastructure that a lunar economy simply cannot exist without? Or are they building a very expensive, very complex bridge to nowhere, betting everything on a future that might not pan out the way they hope? The answer to that question isn't just about one company. It could very well define the next era of commercial space.